Good afternoon and welcome everyone. I'm Laura Sipe, Director of Strategic Engagement and Alumni Relations for the College of Engineering, and we're excited to have you here for the first stop on our 2021 Dean's Roadshow. We launched our Roadshow program. This is our 6th season, and since then we have visited just under 1,800 total people in 6 cities across the state of Ohio, and also virtually last year and now this year. We're excited to be adding to those numbers with more virtual participants like yourselves today. And the main reason we do this program is so that we can share the good news about what's happening at the college, but more importantly, why that is relevant to you no matter where you are in the world. So we're excited to have you with us today. We are even more excited that during today's roadshow, we get to introduce you to the new leader of the college, Dean Ayanna Howard. In just a few moments, you're going to hear about her background, about her research interests in artificial intelligence and robotics, and about some of her priorities for the college and where she plans to take us in the coming years of her leadership. So you're in for a real treat. Before we get things underway, though, I just have a few housekeeping notes for you. If you do need access to closed captioning services, there should be a button at the bottom of your screen with the CC on it. Go ahead and click that. And also, as you're listening to the conversation today, if something sparks your interest and you'd like to learn a little bit more, please put a question in the Q&A section, which should be a button on the bottom of your screen as well. We'll have time at the end of today's program for the dean to answer your questions, so I would encourage you to do that. So one of the first things that we learned about Dean Howard when she began her tenure here with us is her passion for putting students first. So we thought, what better way for us to help you get to know Dean Howard than through the eyes of a current student? So now I am happy to welcome to the program one of our leaders of the National Society for Black Engineers student chapter here at Ohio State, Lexi Wallace. Lexi is the vice president of NSBE, and she is a 4th-year biomedical engineering major. Take it away, Lexi.
Hello. So I'm going to be asking Dean Howard some questions just to get to know a little bit more about her background. So I wanted to start with this or that. So I'll just ask you a question. I'll say 2 things and you tell me which one you prefer.
Okay, we could do this.
Okay, so scarlet or gray?
Scarlet.
Okay, Jenny's or Grater's ice cream?
Ice cream.
Star Wars or Star Trek?
Is there a choice? Of course, Star Trek.
Summer or winter?
Summer.
Me too. Cleveland Browns or Cincinnati Bengals?
Cincinnati Bengals.
Yes, okay.
See, we're clicking right here.
Movies or TV shows?
Movies.
Yes. Breakfast or dinner?
Breakfast.
Me
or
too.
Lunch and dinner.
Ooh, yes, definitely. And then what is your favorite place to eat in Columbus?
So right now it's One Line Coffee. And so you might not think that it's food, but I can survive without food. I can't survive without coffee. So that's really my favorite to-go-to place now.
Fair enough. And what's your favorite place in Columbus, or a place that you want to go in Columbus?
So my favorite place so far is some place called Hocking Hills. Beautiful hiking, beautiful waterfalls, just part of nature.
Very nice. And what did you want to be when you were a kid, or did you always want to be an engineer?
So I wanted to be a roboticist. And so what that meant was I'm an engineer, but I'm also a computer scientist. I'm a cognitive scientist, and all wrapped in because I'm a roboticist.
And what made you want to be a roboticist?
Movies and TV. I thought that I could create all the things that I saw on TV. I didn't realize that you couldn't actually do that, and that was fantasy, but that's what I wanted to do.
Very nice. And what's one book or movie that inspires you?
The Matrix.
I love The Matrix.
And number 1, not 2 or 3, like the original
Yes.
Matrix.
That's the best one. And knowing that you were in NSBE when you were in college, what's your favorite NSBE memory?
Oh, National Convention. And I think it was because I know we're supposed to be quick, but at my undergrad, there wasn't a lot of individuals that were, basically from my same background. And at convention, it was like all these students from different schools getting together. I mean, it was like the best.
Oh, definitely. It's such an experience. It's amazing. And then I just want to ask you some questions about your research in artificial intelligence. So when did you first know that AI and robotics were for you?
So I knew robotics was for me when I started hacking different things. So my very first robot was a remote control car, and I actually hacked it. So back in the day, we had things called modems. And so I hacked a modem so that I could program my robot, which was basically a remote control car. And I thought it was great. I mean, it only went forward and back, but I was like, then I was hooked in terms of robotics. And then artificial intelligence was when I first started interning with NASA. And I created my first neural network that was awesome and strange all at the same time.
Incredible. Wow. And what's one thing you wish more people knew about AI and robotics?
I wish that people would know that everyone can do it. You don't necessarily have to be classically trained in algorithms or engineering, but there's all these tools that are out there where you can create your own packages and your own applications. And so I wish that people realize that it's much more accessible than, say, the media showcases in general.
And how do you think AI and robotics make the world a better place?
So one of the things is AI robotics is pervasive. I don't think people realize that everything they use now has an algorithm, has intelligence behind it. I mean, something as simple as if you want to create a coffee, I love coffee again, I'm going to mention that, right? And you have this thing where in the morning, it might actually brew at exactly the right rate, at exactly the right temperature, at exactly the right pressure. Well, there's algorithms that were designed to basically identify that and to identify the parameters to get us to that space. If you think about flights and airplanes now that we're flying again, like behind that cockpit, there are algorithms that are driving the sensors and driving the kinds of things with respect to pilot interaction that is, again, is based on intelligence. It's pretty much everywhere.
That's a really good point. I hadn't even thought about something like coffee, just like making it. Wow. And what's one accomplishment that you are most proud of?
I think so I always say I'm always proud of what I'm working on now, but I think the one accomplishment I'm most proud of is when I realized the power of engineering to really impact the world. So earlier on, and I still focus on research for children with special needs. So doing pediatric rehabilitation. And one of our very, very, very first studies, we were with a child with cerebral palsy. And I remember we had brought in this technology. And of course, as engineers, we're like, we have no idea if it's going to work. But I remember at one instance, the child interacted with we basically had an application, a virtual reality game. And the child actually moved and popped this bubble. And I remember there was a smile on this kid's face. And I thought, wow, like we did that. Like our technology did that. And it was just such a special moment that I realized that as engineers, we have this special power to make basically, in this case, a kid's dream a reality. And I don't think a lot of engineers, especially students, realize that that's a magical power that we have.
Oh, I definitely agree. That's amazing though that you did that. That's incredible. And what made you decide to teach after working at NASA?
So I did not go into academia to teach. And the fact is, this love I have for education came because I was immersed in academia. So I came to the academia in order to do research. I mean, that was it. I wanted to continue doing research. We had the second shuttle accident. And research was pretty much like, what is NASA doing in this research thing? Like, why are we doing this? So I decided while we were trying to figure out what NASA should do to do research elsewhere. Companies didn't really have it. The only place you can do it was in academia. So I chose a place that had robotics research and I joined there. And when I was there, they said, oh, by the way, you have to teach. And I thought, oh yeah, I got to figure out this teaching stuff too. And I remember going into the classroom and, I had to do this theory. And I remember my first week, I was like, you know what? This theory does not work. Like, this theory does not work when you actually are trying to deploy it on Mars rovers. And I remember just the excitement of working with students and trying to get them to see how to convert this theory to applications and how do you actually think about it in that way. And I actually liked it. And so that's why I started realizing the power of teaching and impacting students and really shaping their minds for that future. So now I love teaching, but I did not go into academia to teach, honestly.
Oh, wow. It's kind of funny that you kind of like grew to love it, I guess, instead of like going specifically for it. And what made you want to become a Buckeye?
Because of the opportunities here at Ohio State. So one of the things that I've been talking about for a while is that, as engineers, we need to rethink how we teach engineering. We have to ensure that we engage, our community to this new age. I mean, there's a lot of public sentiment about engineering and science. Like, people don't believe in engineering anymore. And I really think as a university, we can change this messaging. And here at Ohio State, we have all the aspects that allow us to do this. We have the scale, we have the collaborations with industry, we have the interactions with government, both at the state and the local level. And it's like all these community-based components allow us to really prove and show how we can do education in terms of engineering, computer science, architecture in a way that makes sense for the nation and international populations as well. So that's what brought me here, because it is the perfect storm of all the things I think are necessary to move the field to this next stage.
Wow. Yes. And one last question. Can you tell us how your research has evolved over time, and what are you focusing on now? I guess it's two questions, but.
Yeah, so evolution, my first area of research it's always been on human-robot interaction, where people are part of your system. Before I was on science-driven robotics, so worked on future rover navigation for Mars, then in academia sent rovers to glaciers, both on the surface as well as underwater in terms of Antarctica. And so it was really focused on science. Now it focuses much more on the home environment. So looking at pediatrics, looking at how do we bring in robots into the clinic as well as into the home environment to really engage children to achieve their developmental milestones. And lastly, I also look at this aspect of bias and trust, because as society adopts AI, more so in terms of it being pervasive, we know that there are elements of overtrust in these systems and also elements of bias in terms of different types of outcomes, depending on the AI algorithm you're using, whether it's in healthcare or education. And so I also look at that and how do you design algorithms and methods to mitigate that so that we have the best of the AI, but also the best in terms of differences with the different groups of people, different demographics.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing all these stories with us, and thank you for talking with me.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Lexi. That was fun. We really appreciate learning about the Dean through your eyes. So now that we've taken a moment to look in the rearview mirror at Dean Howard's background and where she's been with her research, let's shift gears a little bit and look forward to some of her priorities for the college. The first one we want to talk about today is diversity, inclusion, and belonging. And here to lead us through that conversation is Lisa Barclay, who is the Assistant Dean and Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer for the college. Lisa?
Thank you, Laura. Good afternoon, everyone. And hello, Dean Howard. Good to see you. So, I got to go back to the rapid fire that Lexi did. I'm sorry, I'm going to start off here. I know that it was moving fast and there was a lot coming at you, but the Cleveland Browns or Cincinnati Bengals, I need to go back to that and just clarify. I'm going to toss it to you one more time here.
Yeah, okay, so I'm going to explain this. Yeah. I'm going to explain this. It's because I've been to Cincinnati. I have not yet been to Cleveland. And so it's really about the fact that I've been to Cincinnati versus anything else. And so when I get to Cleveland at some point, hopefully this fall, we might can have another question and answer on that one.
Okay, that helps my heart. And those who are Cleveland Browns fans, diehard fans, we can live with that. But let me toss in a few more. Are you text or talk?
Oh, I'm text. Okay, so I'm going to say I am an engineer. I like text. I mean, I can text like an emoji like crazy and people will understand. Voice, that takes time. Like an hour with one question.
Facebook or IG?
Facebook.
Okay.
That tells you my age.
It just confirming. Zoom or Microsoft Teams for meetings?
Oh, Zoom, of course.
Yes, no, that sounds
No, you know, okay, so I want to say Zoom, yes, but I'm sure we might have some alums that work at Microsoft. So I just want to make sure that there is love for Microsoft as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you know, as we think about moving to Zoom or Microsoft, those types of platforms, we really saw it in March of 2020 here at OSU and other places around the country. So you started your term here while we were in the midst of a pandemic. We still are, actually. It was following the worldwide outrage in response to racial injustice and inequality here in the United States. Institutions across the country were forced to really confront some very painful realities. And in our own College of Engineering community, we were actively engaged as well. We had students, staff, and faculty who shared their experiences, very painful experiences, being here on campus, in our classrooms, in our laboratories, in our office space. But they didn't just share those experiences. We had leaders from the National Society of Black Engineers, student leaders from Lambda Psi, and faculty and staff who worked very closely with them, who didn't stop with just bringing the issues forward. They brought forward solutions and recommendations to college leadership. And from that, up under the leadership of our previous dean, the College Action Plan for Racial Equity and Inclusion came into place. And so as you transition into your position, and so many new priorities start to come across your desk, how will you make sure that this plan moves forward and it's added to over your term here?
You know, so one of the things, this is a time that we have to make these changes. You know, in higher ed, we've been talking about, you know, especially in engineering, we've already talked about, well, there's a gender divide, there's marginalized communities, and it's not equal. Like engineering does not necessarily look like the world population and the demographics. And we've been talking about this for years. I mean, I remember these conversations when I was an undergrad, because I was president of NSBE, and you know, I was like, hey, why do we not have more faculty that are from underrepresented backgrounds or are from women? In terms of then, it was a binary class. You were either male or female. We've been talking about this, and this is the first time that I've actually heard words like systemic racism or institutionalized. Like those words were not used before. It was like, yeah, there's a pipeline issue, there's a pathway issue. And so one of the things we are going to do is how do we ensure that this is not just, you know, a year from now, 2 years from now, when people feel better about themselves, that it's like, oh, we're good. We've increased our numbers by 5%. We did good. But the way we have to do that is we have to be very intentional of weaving it into our curriculum. We have to be very intentional in weaving it into our processes and our practices, and also our incentives. So one of the things in academia, we are driven by incentives. And if our incentives do not align with doing right, then we're not going to do it. We're going to forget about it. We're going to be like, oh, I felt good. Now I'm much better because we've done a little bit. And so you move on. So those are kinds of things. And of course, with your help, Lisa, we're going to make sure that it sticks and is part of our infrastructure and it is institutionalized so that when we're here 150 years from now, we're not talking about the same problems that we have 150 years in the past.
Absolutely. A quote I heard a little while ago was, the obstacle to parity is not the lack of solutions, but it's the lack of institutional will. And so with you at the lead, and I'm right here with you, we've got a great team. I think there's will to make some change there. You mentioned incentives, and I'm going to say maybe in particular in terms of faculty. And so that brings me to thinking about the RAISE initiative that's here at the university. And for those who are on the call, RAISE is an acronym. You know, we love those here at Ohio State. Race, inclusion, and society, social equity hiring is what the initiative stands for. And so there's this initiative where we're looking to hire more than 150 tenure track faculty members, and many of those faculty members will have work that focuses on race and health equity and race and educational equity and STEM, public safety and resources and the environment. How is this, or how do you see this RAISE initiative impacting the College of Engineering?
Well, I'm competitive like most engineers. So 150 slots, yeah, we should get at least 100 of those. But one of the things I think that it'll help is that this is part of the incentive. How do you say that this is important? So it was one thing if you give like seed funding, like, oh, here's 20K to do something, but it's another when you're saying we're going to hire faculty in this area. And faculty, that's a lifetime job. You have faculty, it's a lifetime job. You are committed to the students, you're committed to the research. And so to have faculty think about this and bring them on, that this is their scholarship about how do we do equity. And that leads into economic development, that leads into health, that leads into understanding education and the educational divide. When that is your scholarship versus just your outreach, it actually not only makes a difference to Ohio State, but also makes a difference to the world. And so we are going to capitalize on it. What I will say though, it does require us as engineering to do a reflection of why we hadn't done this before, and what are the gaps, and what do we need to do to be more inclusive and make everyone feel like they belong. And this is going to be, I would say, I won't say painful, but it's going to be this thing of like, I'm as much a fault as everyone else. Every faculty member is at fault as everyone else. But once we start to admit, like the 10-step program, you have to admit we have a problem, then we can move on to figure out the solutions. So I'm hopeful, and things like RAISE is part of the incentive of, if we get it right, we have colleagues that we will be working with. It'll allow us to open up engineering. It'll allow us to bring in more students, and it'll allow us to train this next generation of engineers in thinking about their responsibility as they design solutions for the world.
And as you talk about the recruitment process of bringing in or increasing our numbers of diverse faculty, what retention initiatives do you see going alongside that for faculty? Because it's great to bring them, but how do we keep them?
Yeah, so, this is a worry, because if we're bringing in, say, 150, 100 faculty, we don't also want to lose 100 faculty, because then there's no gain in this. And so there's a couple of things that we need to look at in terms of retention. One is how do we create a culture of belonging? That means we're going to do a lot of things around mentorship. One of the things we don't do so well, and this is just in academia, we recruit and then we're like, okay, figure it out. Good luck. We'll see you in 5 years for tenure, right? We don't do very well when we think about onboarding and mentorship throughout the career profile of a faculty member. And so what that means is that if you are of an underrepresented minority, or you are of a underrepresented gender, it means that you sometimes feel isolated and lonely. And so mentorship is one of these keys. The other thing is tying this aspect of mentorship belonging to the students. So I know as a faculty member, when you're interacting with the students, that's like the fountain of youth, right? Like every time you interact with these students, they're excited. They're always the same age because they're always like entering. And so if we can make sure that our faculty are also much more aligned with the students' needs and the students' passion around these things, I think it's also a win-win, which makes you, I won't say it'll make you feel bad when you leave, but it also makes you feel like, well, I don't want to leave Ohio State because I do not want to disappoint these students. But we have to make those connections. And again, it's the community building effort.
And those opportunities sometimes do come up and faculty leave. And so we are happy to have you here at Ohio State as that process happened. Just for a second, can we talk about your former institution? And it's going to be just a second. As we think about Georgia Tech, they have what appears to be a very strong relationship and history of collaborating with minority serving institutions like the All Women's College and HBCU Spelman, North Carolina A&T, University of Puerto Rico, and other HBCUs in the Southern region. We have two great, tremendous HBCUs, just over an hour, 45 minutes, depending on how you drive, in Ohio, Central State University and Wilberforce University. I'd love to hear your thoughts on how you can take maybe what you learned or experienced at Georgia Tech and bring that here to Ohio State as we look to build relationships with our other Ohio HBCUs?
Yeah, I think one of the keys with any type of relationship, and especially when it comes to HBCUs and MSIs, minority serving institutions, is that the relationship has to be two ways. A lot of times I think we, as what we call a PWI, when we reach out to HBCU, is as if we're reaching out and we're helping you, and you should be grateful. And it's just kind of, I would say, being a top tier university, we're here because we believe in ourselves. But these have to be double relationships. The HBCU has to also receive something just like we do. And so some of this, which I'm very happy is we are rebuilding some of these relationships with Central and Wilberforce about what does it look like, not just in terms of students. It's not that we just want your students, right? Because that's just the one way. But then how can we also collaborate around research? What are the research threads that are there, the research threads that are here, where we actually have partnerships? And what does a partnership look like where we have this exchange of information? And when we're interacting with companies and when we're interacting with industry, bringing everyone to the table in terms of having that conversation, because the companies are also interested in working with HBCUs and MSIs, and they sometimes have no clue how to do this either. And so I'm actually very hopeful and very thankful that we are pursuing this and figuring out what does this partnership look like so that it strengthens us here in College of Engineering, but it also strengthens the HBCUs that are in Ohio.
Good. Wonderful. I have one last question, and it actually is going to go back to the students and thinking about the students in the classroom and our faculty. So as we think about teaching on topics like power, privilege, social identity, unconscious bias, how do you see us connecting that to leadership in engineering? How do we bring that understanding that those aren't just important topics or topics of the day, but those topics are intricately connected to what you do as an engineer?
Yeah, so I think this is, it's twofold. One is in education and really, and I mentioned responsibility. A lot of times when we talk about, and I'll just say diversity, a lot of times we think about it as a secondary, like, oh, we have to do this, but remember, we need a diverse team. But there's been so many studies that have shown that diversity has to be the first component. And when we think about diversity, gender and ethnicity and race, those are the easy ones, but diversity is much broader than that. It deals with disability, it deals with age, it deals with the fact that I have a social economic divide. It really is having people who have diverse lived experiences coming together to create a solution for the world. And so that is basically one step away from them having an optimal, beautiful product in the end. And so some of it has to do with our education. How do we instill in this from freshmen all the way through their senior year, through senior design to their very, very, very first class? But it also has to do with faculty. Faculty are the gatekeepers. They're the ones that interact with the students. If they do not see a student that looks like a researcher, they tend to not go for that student and say, hey, come into my lab. And so some of it is retraining and expanding the minds of faculty so that they see students equally. A student that may not have CS programming in high school can probably still learn how to program. A student who is from a rural place in Ohio that may not have had the AP calculus, you know what? They're probably really great at math. And we have to have faculty rethink and open up their minds to look at all students basically equally and just accept. And so it's not going to be easy. It's going to be a challenge to change the mindset of faculty and to also integrate these attributes in our curriculum. But I think it's a worthy cause. And at the end, it will basically be good for engineering. It will be good for the college and will be good for Ohio State.
Dean Howard, as you know, I could sit and talk about these topics much, much longer, and I appreciate your rapid responses and your very thoughtful responses in terms of my questions. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. We appreciate you bringing some insight on that diversity, inclusion, and belonging to our guests today. So, as many of you know, engineers, architects, planners, they are change makers. they can put their problem-solving skills to work to make the world a better place. So here to walk us through the dean's next priority for the college, which is ethics and engineering for the greater good, is Rachel Kajfez, who is an assistant professor in the Department of Engineering Education. Hi, Rachel. But she's also a two-time alumna from our civil engineering department. Rachel?
Thank you, Laura. We're not going to do rapid fire again, but as someone from Cleveland, I appreciate the explanation on the Bengals versus Browns thing. So thank you very much. And we do need to get you up to Cleveland. All right. So yeah, as Laura said, this is a complex world. It's has a lot of challenging problems, but our students are the ones that are going to tackle those. So my first question is, why do you think it's important for us to explicitly teach our students about their potential impact as engineers and how they can really change the world?
Well, there's been a couple of studies that have shown that when high school seniors come to engineering, this is not just, the study wasn't focused on Ohio State, but when they come to engineering, they want to change the world, right? In whatever form or fashion. And these same studies show that when they graduate, they want a job. And basically what happens is the way we design our curriculum, the way we design our educational process is focused on you need to be competitive. Why? Because you need to get a good job. And somehow we lose this aspect of, no, you want to change the world. And so I think it's important that we do this. One, they're already coming in primed to want to change the world because, they're 17, 18-year-olds. They think they can do everything and anything. But we need to make sure that that passion about what it is that made them passionate about engineering, about whatever their field is, whether it's civil or engineering education, that we keep that passion alive and give them the tools to convert that passion to actual implementation with our theories, with our algorithms, with the types of design processes we teach them.
Thank you. Yeah, I love that. I've taught a lot of freshmen, and that passion and energy for everything is quite unique there. And if we can get that going more and sustain it, I think that's great. We'll see where they all end up. So as engineers, though, when we're thinking about, I got to teach my classes, we're really focused on the content a lot of the time. So, I got to teach this process or this algorithm or whatever it is. But we know it's really important to include professional skills in our engineering education as well. And those are really the skills that are going to help our students tackle these problems. So what suggestions do you have for faculty related to strategies to incorporate these professional skills into their courses?
Yeah, so it's always interesting when you talk to engineers, I talk to myself sometimes. And when we talk about professional skills, we always use the word soft skills, as if engineering is hard and everything else is soft. And I think that also that mindset and that communication and messaging, it gets into the students, right? And so if they like to communicate, that's soft, that's not hard enough. And therefore, I'm not going to lean into improving that if I'm really bad at communication. And so I think one of the things that we can do as faculty is as we're carving these aspects, as we're designing, I'm electrical engineering by trade, computer engineering by trade, control. Like when we design a feedback control rule or law, or we're doing adaptive control, why can't we actually incorporate some aspects of, now I want you to explain it to a third grader. And your grade is based on how well you explain it to a third grader, right? Like making that part of the evaluation will allow our students to see the importance of some of these quote unquote professional skills or soft skills. But it's around communication, it's around collaboration, working with other ones. It's also around, being okay with taking risks and quote unquote making mistakes, but learning. A lot of times I think the students are afraid to make mistakes because it's like, oh, that's my grade. But if we design this whole echelon of, no, making mistakes is part of the learning process. And if you get it perfectly the first time, it means the problem wasn't hard enough. And so you get a C for that. Whereas if you get a problem, you make a mistake, you learn, and then solve it, that's an A, because that is what we want you to learn. I think it requires us to rethink, though, our pedagogy. It requires us to rethink how we do testing and evaluation.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I like to talk to freshmen about failing early and often, because that's where we learn. So throughout the college, one of the things we've also been doing to enhance this, students' ability to tackle these challenging problems and create value for others is we've been teaching an entrepreneurial mindset as a way to prepare them. So what are the benefits, do you think, of teaching this type of mindset to our students, and how might it separate them from students who haven't developed a mindset during their engineering education?
Yeah, so this entrepreneurial mindset and Keen Foundation is one of the sponsors for this. I think it's important, and it's a couple of reasons. As engineers, we like to create things. We like to solve problems and develop solutions. But a lot of times we don't realize that our problems are not the world's problems. And so a lot of times when we're thinking about, oh, I'm going to do this because I think it's a problem. It's like, yeah, it's a problem of one person. And I think when you're thinking about this whole entrepreneurial mindset, what it really teaches you is to look at the world and find real world problems and then figure out, how do you resolve this? What are the steps you need to think about this? And so this entrepreneurial mindset is really about training your mind to think more broadly. And then of course, giving you the tools to actually attack that. Who are the customers, quote unquote? What are the problems? What is the smallest viable product that you can create that addresses the problem? And then what is the next, and what is the next, and what is the next? I think is important, not just for startups and entrepreneurs and designing that way, but also for students that work with companies where they are trying to create new products and solve other problems. And even in management, where people are actually interesting. And you can think of that of, how do I solve a human-human interaction problem using this entrepreneurial mindset?
Yeah, I always like to think when people say, oh, creating value, or my product is creating value, I always ask then, but creating value for who? And have we thought about that? Because there are so many dimensions, especially as we talk about diversity and inclusion and all those things. Yeah. So what do you think are some good examples of programs within the college that are kind of helping our students develop this mindset towards creating value, changing the world, helping others? What are some examples of that?
So there's a few. So one I will mention is CDME, which is one of our centers. What they have is that companies will come with basically a problem. We would like you to address X. And what they do is they put together a team of students that has an advisor to kind of lead them. And they will work on a solution to that very specific problem. And one of the nice things about that is that the teams are very diverse in terms of their intellect. So it's not just a mechanical engineer or a civil engineer, it's like all of the above, plus students from the College of Arts and Sciences, plus students from public policy, plus, right? And so that's really the team. When you go on in corporate America, that's what a team is. You're working with people who have from different disciplines. And so I think that is a great example of getting students to learn how to work together, also working with non-engineers to solve someone's problem that really does exist, because they're paying for it, right? So it exists, because if you're not paying for it, maybe that's not really a problem, but if you're paying for it, then it is someone's problem and someone cares about it.
For sure, yeah. So you mentioned Keen before, so Keen, the current entrepreneurial engineering network. So how might we at OSU leverage Keen or other national organizations to help us prepare our students for this complex life they're gonna come into?
Yeah, so one thought about this is, as faculty, and you had asked, well, how do faculty integrate this? How do they change and their pedagogy? One of the things that I say is like, oh, we just do this. This is actually really hard. If I'm teaching you how I learned. That's traditionally what you're doing. I have a lived experience. This is how I learned. And therefore, I'm going to teach the students based on the way that I learned. If I did not learn based on this entrepreneurial mindset, it's going to be a struggle for me to rethink, how do I do this? It actually is difficult. And so I think one of the things that we can do with just this relationship with Keen is, how do you make it so that faculty don't have to struggle with this? Faculty don't necessarily have to go to, a 6-week course to figure this out, because frankly, if they don't see the value, they're going to be like, why am I doing this for 6 weeks? And so how do we make it so that it's a seamless, and it's almost like a plug and play? And why I say this is possible, if I think about coding, and I'll mention coding, there are tools where non-computer scientists can create their own applications with tools that are available. So I want to design a new app, like a Facebook app. Pretty much anyone can do that now without knowing how to really code. So can we do this kind of same thing where we have our partnership with Keen, creating these things where I can take this, I can integrate it into my courses in the curriculum, and my students will get this aspect of a mindset, but as a faculty member, I don't have to struggle to figure this out.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. I'm actually helping run a Keen workshop right now. And so it's all about resources and giving those things out to help people. So I think that's great. So I have one more question for you. So where do you see us going next in terms of preparing the future generation of engineers who are going to tackle and solve these complex problems we're facing?
Yeah, so my vision and my goal is to ensure that the College of Engineering here at Ohio State is the gold standard for the world. There's things, that engineering has to do as a field. We have to adapt to the changing environment. We have to adapt to the changing demographics. Engineering needs to change. Otherwise, we are going to become archaic. We're going to basically, if we don't change, we're going to be out of a job at some point because the robots are going to come and take it. I mean, that's a joke, but really, I worry about us as a field. And therefore, what I like to do here is make us the gold standard. I like to do these kind of pilots and figure out what actually works in terms of engineering education, in terms of ensuring that we have these responsible engineers from freshman all the way to senior year, that we create students that are valuable to companies, but also have their own startups and also are concerned about their role, belonging, and diversity and inclusive excellence as they're going out into the world. And I think because we have the scale to do this, it also means that we can talk to others and say, look, if we can do it here with all of our complexity and all of our students, then no one else has an excuse. That, your little school, there's no excuse if we can do it. And so that is the goal, is to really be the gold standard and provide this information and disseminate what we've learned so that others can follow.
Great. Thank you so much, Dean Howard. This has been awesome.
Thank you.
Dean Howard, I think you had a few closing thoughts before we shift gears back into questions with the audience.
Yeah, so a couple of things I want to, I know there's a number of individuals that are out there. One of the big questions is always, well, as an alum, what is it that we can do? And so one of the things is that as alums, there are so many things you can do. I mentioned this aspect of the entrepreneurial mindset. I mentioned this aspect of connecting what we're doing within the academic environment to real world problems. And one of the keys is, one, coming back to campus, of course, and showing students, there is another side after graduation, and it's so much better, but it's based on the things that you learned at Ohio State and the College of Engineering, and really touching back and really engaging. But also when the students come to you in your companies, in your communities, really ensuring that this whole aspect of belonging, that they feel like they do belong in the communities, within the companies. And so there's a bunch of things we're going to start pushing out that you'll probably get inundated with the things that we're going to pilot that will really engage and really need your assistance to push this needle forward, to really engage and ensure that engineering is where it needs to be for the next generation in the future.
Thank you, Dean Howard. Okay, I realize we've just done a lot of talking, a lot of listening, a lot of great topics have been covered here today, but now it's our time to turn to you. And so we got several questions in advance from those of you who registered for the event. We're going to start with some of those, Dean Howard. And then as those of you who are watching live, if you think of questions, feel free to add those to the chat. We're going to do our best to get to as many as we can. If we can't cover everything, apologies right now. There's just a lot of good content here today. So let's kick things off with a pretty big question that came in from Cedric McGee, who asks, what is the one thing that makes you excited to come to work?
It's the students. I will tell you, I come to campus, even when I started in March, I came to campus. Even though there weren't a lot of students, there was one or two, and there was a couple of students I would just, with masks on, I'd be like, hey, my whole thing is name, rank, and serial number, i.e. what is your name, what's your major, and what year are you in school, and what is exciting about engineering to you. But that's really what excites me. The reason I stay in academic, the reason I stay in higher ed is because of the students and the power that we can have in shaping the future through our students.
they really do make it a worthwhile place to be here. You really feel like even in the work that I do, you're helping the greater good and helping the future. So I'm with you on that. So watch out, students. If we see you on the Oval, we're coming for you. We have a question from Rob Savage, who asks, what is your vision of excellence for the college and how will you be measuring success?
Yeah, so, the way I think about excellence is around three things. Of course, there's research excellence, and that is fairly straightforward. Number of publications, in terms of research dollars we're bringing in, graduate students we're advising, and things like that. The other element as an academic is rankings. So we will look at this aspect of excellence, and rankings is how peers view you. So we can say that we're great, and in fact, our rankings are pretty good. But if our peers say we're not great, then we're basically blindsiding. We're not giving the right messaging. And so that's also one of the things we're going to be looking at, teaching, which I talked about a little bit in terms of education. With that one, we want to make sure that students are graduating, of course, in the time that they're doing it, but also do they have this change mindset? So we talked about entrepreneurial mindset. How do we measure that? So how do we measure from freshman to senior year? And one of the things I mentioned was that, as freshmen, they come in, they want to change the world, and as seniors, not so. Can we measure that to show that we have changed the needles, that we have changed curriculum in the positive way? But we have to, of course, develop these kind of metrics. We just don't have them right now, but we will be doing things around that space. The other is around outreach and service. One of the things as a land grant institution is our role in not just Columbus, but in Ohio. And what does that mean? What is that mission? And so the things that we will measure as well is how well do we outreach to the community, whether it's in terms of our local school systems, K through 12, whether it's to our state administrators or even our local government. How well do we do this? And what are the metrics to evaluate this? That is also another aspect. Ideally, what we should see is companies are coming to Ohio. Why? Because we have these great institutions. Ohio State is there. We can create the workforce that they need. And of course, the environment is inclusive. And so excellence is a bunch of different ways to measure it, but we will be measuring it across this aspect, of course, of research, teaching, which I mentioned, but also this outreach to the community based on our land grant mission.
Thank you. So let's kind of go back to some of the priorities that you talked about during today's program. We have a question from Tracy Ward, who asks, as someone who works to support STEAM programs in K through 12, what ways can various organizations partner to support diversity opportunities?
Yeah, so one of the things that, and I'm going to mention a couple of pilots that we are running here, but then how do you interact with K through 12? So one of the things that we know around, and I would say loosely diversity, equity, inclusion, but really diversity, inclusion, and belonging, is that when students come here to engineering, their backgrounds or where they grew up or what schools that they went to should not be the barrier. We should not make that the barrier because, a child does not choose who they're born to or what in community, even if they're smart. And so our role is to ensure that we have access, we have equitable processes in terms of teaching and training in these engineering disciplines, which basically means if we go through K through 12, it also means that we have to reach out to our community leaders. Some of those aspects and a couple of the programs that we're looking at is how do we embed students, undergrad students, because you don't necessarily want some old faculty member like me going into talking to a third grader because we're probably not going to do so well. But an undergrad student who has just graduated from high school that is going back to their local high school, that is going back to their middle school, in fact, and maybe even elementary school that is talking. How do we do that much more? And so we have an ambassadors program, for example, but really expanding on that so we can basically attack not just Columbus, but also the rural areas of Ohio, Cleveland as well, and Cincinnati. We're coming for you. And so these are kind of things we want to do, but it's really being there, being present, and really making sure that just because we're higher ed, that K through 12 is our pathways, is our pipelines, and how do we ensure that that happens?
Thank you. Yes, it's been a long time since we've been to Cleveland. We definitely need to cover that. We're coming. In terms of, we talked a little bit about engineering for the greater good, and Ruth Bergen wants to know, what are some specific areas of need that you would like to see the college be able to impact the greater good?
Yeah, so one area in terms of the greater good is around mobility. So we have a number of different, I would say, emerging areas, strategic areas that we will be expanding and augmenting. So one is around mobility. And so if you think about what is this aspect of mobility, so there's the traditional mobility, you could think of transportation, design, but there's this whole world of mobility in terms of individuals with disabilities. How do we create pathways, whether it's transportation or self-driving cars or drone delivery, that enhances the quality of life of those with disabilities, or older individuals that might be shut off from home, from their home environments or their loved ones? You know, how can we close that gap? How do we bring in goods to areas that may not have pathways to get there? How do we, as we know, there's food deserts in a lot of places. How can we use technology to ensure that even though there might be a food desert, maybe we can deliver these kinds of goods directly to a home environment, directly to these communities, so that this concept of, well, maybe there's not a local restaurant, maybe there's not a local grocery store, which we're not going to solve, but maybe we can use technology to actually change the demographics of that region so that the social economics are not such a large divide. And so what the things that we can think about, the things that we can do is identify these problems, support us in terms of the local communities, because a lot of these also involves working with the council, the city councils, working with the local agencies to ensure that we have a presence, to ensure that the barriers are not barriers, but they can be relieved, and we can just do good technology working with the community to really disperse and deploy kind of the things that we have here in Ohio State.
Great. So let's shift gears a little bit. We had a few different questions about curriculum and experiential learning opportunities for students. One of them is, what can we do to help more students line up internships? This came in from James Kaiser.
Yeah, so one is a pilot we were running next summer. And so if anyone out there wants to sign on, definitely send us an email. So one of the things we want to make sure is, I mentioned that students really need to have a lot more, we had mentioned the entrepreneurial mindset, but part of that is also understanding this real world problems and how they fit into that. And so imagine, if you will, a freshman, they graduate. If, as we know, most freshmen, rising sophomores, they don't get technical jobs because, you know, they know just enough, but not really enough to be functional and have the extreme value that a company would pay for. So how can we incorporate this aspects of I would call it a staycation internship, where companies come, they identify, just like I mentioned with CDME, they come, they identify a project, maybe it's in manufacturing, maybe it's in mobility. We work with student cohorts, but what we do is we wrap the curriculum around that. So maybe it's that you need a new tool. Maybe they need to learn some elements of SolidWorks, and you know, they don't really get that right after their freshman year. Maybe we can give them just enough so that they can, you know, basically be sort of dangerous, solve whatever problem the company has in store, and they also get paid for it. Now, they don't get paid the actual rate because they're in this cohort model, is around curriculum, but they actually get paid so that they understand their value. So it's twofold. One is they understand their value because they get paid for doing engineering work. Two, we also connect them with companies who now can start recruiting from very, very early on. They don't have to wait until their junior or senior year. They can start identifying students that are promising very early on, and they know that they're going to be quality because we have instructors that are guiding the students so that you will get the product that you have. So how can you help? Again, we are starting to solicit companies. We already have 3 that are interested in basically sponsoring this and supporting these teams around different projects. What it involves, though, is also identifying the younger engineers that are in your organization, because just like the undergrads will go through K through 12, you need the young engineers to actually interact with the students so that they have much more of an understanding and they feel like, oh, I can do this. I can work for this company. There's a natural language of solving these problems together. So that will be a pilot next summer.
That's really exciting. I can't wait to learn more about that. So on the flip side of things, moving from students to faculty, Stacey Ann Russell asks, how do we hold faculty accountable for delivering innovative curriculum that's technically and culturally relevant?
Yeah, so this goes to the question of metrics. So I teach a course. I've taught it for 10 years. The students learn, they get an A. Why should I change? They get jobs. Why should I change? Why should I incorporate other elements? And so really it's about the fact of how do we increase the things around them? So if I'm teaching something, how do we create these modules where the sessions themselves and the assignments and the homework problems and the exams are much more inclusive? As an example, if I'm teaching and I mentioned, feedback control. So maybe I'm teaching something about control. Could I use an example around sustainability? Could I use an example around water? Could I use an example around energy in communities that may not have access to the grid, right? What that does is that you can still teach, you're still teaching these basic fundamentals, but you wrap it around problems that are real problems of the world. What it does is that it allows students to see how their theory relates to things that they see around them, that they hear in the news, that they see in the media, but it also ensures that the faculty are also learning as well, because they're going to integrate these things. And it doesn't require them to necessarily change what they're teaching. It doesn't necessarily require them to figure out how do they derive something that they've been deriving for the last 20 years and change how they present that. What it does is it wraps it around the application space.
Thank you. And I think this will be our last question of the day. I apologize that we weren't able to cover all the questions, but I really appreciate everybody's enthusiasm for sending these in. This comes in from Catherine Gerber, who asks, what sorts of community partnerships would you like to see at the regional campuses to help elevate and support engineering?
Yeah, so I'm really excited about the regional campuses. So we have the BSET, so Bachelor's of Science in Engineering Technology. And one of the things is we are going to expand that and really expand the access at the regional campuses. And there's a couple of reasons. One there are companies that are out by the regional campuses that the workforce is not there. And the fact is when we have a student in prior years would come to a regional campus and they would transfer to Columbus main campus, a lot of times they wouldn't return back. And so how do we ensure that when a student wants to be an engineer, that wants to stay in the community, that they still get trained and learn in that community, and therefore they're working in the companies that are out there. And so BSET, we are working with expanding that as an access and expanding the curriculum around that. And so just so you know, it incorporates engineering, it incorporates programming, but it also incorporates things like project management. And so we have some business courses so that students they can be basically the plant manager for a manufacturing plant, or they can be the engineer that thinks about how do I basically do a transformation that brings in robots to reimagine the floor. Those are the kinds of engineers we are going to create at the regional campuses. So I'm excited, and it's going to continue to expand. And the way that you can get involved is to reach out to the regional campuses. We are basically building the plane as we're flying it. We have basically the first 2 years, we're designing basically the third and fourth year as we talk. And so having inputs from companies that are in those areas of like, these are the kinds of things that we think your students should know that they don't quite know will definitely help. And then of course, providing them internships as they're working, as they're learning, and as they're taking these courses, so that of course there's this pathway of, and I know I can get a job when I finish this program, when I finish my educational journey.
With that, I'd like to say thank you, Dean Howard. I appreciate you spending some time with us, with all of our audience today, with telling us a little bit about yourself and with starting to share some of your priorities for where we're headed as a college. We're excited to be on the road with you and to see where things are going. But what we talked about today isn't the total of all the priorities and vision that the dean has. You can see she's smiling. There's a lot more on her plate for where she wants to take the college. So if you have not already done so, I would definitely encourage you to join us tomorrow at noon Eastern time. We're going to be doing the second stop of the Dean's Roadshow. And I can, if you give me just a moment, I can share a little bit of information on that here. So let me hopefully we can, apologies, we're having a little bit of technical difficulties behind the scenes. I want to make sure that we get these up for you so you can see what's coming next. So Dean's Roadshow, second edition, tomorrow. You can still register. There's plenty of time. During this roadshow, we're going to be talking about innovation for the college. And we have a fantastic slate of guest speakers who are going to be actually partnering with us as a college, because we can't do this on our own, as the dean will tell you herself. So again, please be sure to register for that if that is something that you are interested in. Then if there is something that you heard about today that sparked your interest, maybe something where you feel like you are a subject matter expert or you are just ready to lend a hand, I would encourage you to reach out to me directly. And I will make sure that in the post-event emails we send out, you have my contact information. I would be more than happy to connect you with resources, with the people who have that information so that you can help us meet the dean's priorities. Lastly, I will also make sure we include this in our post-event emails. The college has a fantastic selection of social media presences. And this is our very first line where you are able to get to know the latest news from the college and hear about some of the amazing things that our faculty, staff, and students are doing, including we are going to have our very first in-person homecoming tailgate since 2019. We're very excited. That's Saturday, October 9th. What makes that even more exciting is it will be the public grand opening celebration of the Mars G. Fontana Labs. So you'll get to see a cutting edge building on the engineering campus and see firsthand what some of our faculty, staff, and students are doing in that building. We will also, a little birdie told me, be launching a new podcast that I think will have Dean Howard at the helm, where she'll be showcasing some of our faculty, staff, and student rock stars. So if you want to learn more about events and activities like that, be sure to follow our social media channels. We'll be sending those out to you directly in the post-event email. So again, on behalf of myself, I want to say thank you to Dean Howard. I want to say thank you to our other guest speakers, Lexi Wallace, Lisa Barclay, and Rachel Kajfez. I want to thank you for joining us today and hope that we'll see you tomorrow. Thanks and have a great afternoon.